You're watching two press conferences happening at the exact same moment. One is in Washington, one is in Tehran. They're both describing the same event, the same ships, the same strait, the same morning. But one calls it freedom, and the other calls it war. So before you pick a side, who actually gets to name what happens at sea? It started on February 28th. U.S. and Israeli jets struck Iran hard. The kind of strike that ends governments, and it did. Iran's response wasn't another airstrike. It was a door, they closed it. The Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide, responsible for 1/5 of all the oil the world burns every single day, went dark. Ships stopped, ports froze, energy markets went into shock. A ceasefire came on April 8th, brokered quietly, signed carefully, celebrated briefly. Then, on May 4th, President Trump walked to the microphone and said two words that changed everything all over again. Project Freedom. 15,000 troops, over 100 aircraft, destroyers loaded with ballistic missile defense systems. All of it pointed at a gap of water 21 miles wide to walk two merchant ships to the other side. Washington called it defensive, limited, and temporary. Tehran called it a declaration of war. And somewhere in the middle, a sailor on one of those two ships was just trying to go home. Here is what neither press conference told you. 4 things, pay attention. First, the ceasefire was already broken before Project Freedom launched. Iran had reclosed the strait weeks earlier after the U.S. kept its own naval blockade of Iranian ports running. Neither side called it a violation. Both sides kept calling it a ceasefire. Words were doing a lot of heavy lifting. Second, when the U.S. Navy entered the strait on May 4th, Iranian speedboats came out to meet them. The U.S. military destroyed 8 of them. Missiles were fired. Drones were launched toward the UAE, a country that had stayed neutral the entire war, and civilian flights over Dubai were rerouted midair. This is what defensive and limited looked like from the outside. Third, Hegseth stood at the Pentagon podium the next morning and said with a straight face that the ceasefire is still technically intact. Not broken, not suspended, intact, because the U.S. military's position is that escorting ships through international waters is not an act of war. Iran's position is the exact opposite. Both positions are being held simultaneously. Right now, today. Fourth, and this is the one that matters, 2 ships made it through. A U.S.-flagged vessel and a neutral cargo carrier. They crossed 21 miles of active conflict, armed escorts on every side, missiles in the water, and they came out the other end. Washington called that a victory. Tehran called it a provocation. The sailors on those ships called it Tuesday. Here is the thing about naming things. When a government calls something freedom, they mean it for everyone, but they're usually talking about strategy. When a government calls something war, they mean it as a warning, but they're usually talking about survival. Neither word was invented for the sailor in the middle. The one with cargo to deliver, a berth to reach, and a family counting the days on a calendar somewhere. He didn't name it freedom, he didn't name it war. He named it the 63rd day. And when his ship cleared the strait, no ceremony, no podium, no press conference, he probably just went below deck, sat down, and breathed for the first time in 2 months. 2 governments spent billions of dollars, thousands of troops, and every word in the dictionary fighting over 21 miles of water. He just needed to cross it. The strait is still open, for now. The ceasefire is still technically intact, for now. And somewhere in the Persian Gulf, the next ship is already waiting for someone to tell it what to call what comes next. But here is what neither government will put on a podium. Iran attacked U.S. forces more than 10 times since the ceasefire went into effect. 10 times, and both sides still refuse to say the word broken. Iran submitted a 14-point peace proposal. Trump rejected it, called it unacceptable. Iran wants the blockade lifted first. The U.S. wants nuclear constraints agreed first. 2 countries negotiating through missile fire because neither one will move first on paper. Meanwhile, the IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, issued a statement this week saying Trump faces a simple choice: an untenable military operation or a very bad deal. They said his options are running out. And Trump, for his part, said he's watching very, very closely. This is what a ceasefire looks like in 2026. Not silence, not handshakes, not peace, just 2 sides shooting at each other at a measured pace, carefully using words that mean the opposite of what they're doing, while the rest of the world's oil supply holds its breath in a 21-mile gap of dark blue water. The sailor crossed. But the next one is already waiting. And the one after that. And nobody in Washington or Tehran is naming that part. The most dangerous sentence in any war isn't the one that starts it. It's the one both sides agree to say out loud while the shooting continues. If you want to understand what's actually happening behind the headlines, not just who said what, but what it means, subscribe. A new story drops every week.